Okay, I can see a few more people have joined, so yeah, let's get this started. Thank you, everybody, for joining in. This is the second webinar in a multi-part series. A few weeks ago, I hosted the first webinar where I talked about how to set up a content marketing engine in the age of AI. And in it, basically, I talked about all of the prerequisites on how to efficiently run a content marketing strategy. So talked about, which CMS to pick and why, and which best practices to adhere to, and how to publish content, and which CRM to pick, and analytics, and retargeting, and a very simple tool called the Content Calendar. So if you're interested in that, you can check out our YouTube channel and watch it there, but don't do it right now. Do it after the session if you want. And this is now a logical next step. Now that we have the prerequisites in place on how to run a good quality, efficient content marketing engine, how do we actually orchestrate our content to drive business? Because I keep on saying this is what it's all about, right? We're doing content marketing to drive revenue for the business. So first of all, why do I feel qualified talking about this? My background is in marketing. I co-founded a tech startup in 2012, scaled it to a few millions in annual recurring revenue, sold it in 2018, and afterwards basically started consulting digital marketing and content strategy for tech companies. Those were large companies making 100 million in ARR, but also very small companies, just a 2-person founder team, not even 1 million in ARR yet, right? And I basically helped them implement the frameworks that I've seen work well in my own company, and now I've repeatedly seen work well in very large companies and very small companies. So for example, when I sold my business in 2018, by that time, we drove around 1 million unique visitors per year to our blog. And those visitors generated about 1,500 marketing qualified leads per month. And it's really fun to implement a good content engine because it's very rewarding to see your work and then being able to attribute your work to revenue that the business is creating. So what are we going to talk about today here? So first of all, I'm going to talk another very simple tool, just like I said in webinar 1, the Content Calendar is a very simple tool, but discipline and consistency is key. Just because it's simple doesn't mean it can't be extremely powerful. So we're going to talk about the content funnel, because that basically helps us understand the readiness and the intent of our readers. And it gives us a bird's eye, high-level overview of which content we have live and what we should focus next on, basically. And what we should focus next on often depends on the business goals, and we might opt to publish certain content pieces in certain funnel stages due to the goals that the business currently has. Then I'm going to talk about evergreen content and how to create evergreen content. So that's the type of content that can provide this guaranteed base level of traffic to our page. It's something I talked a lot about in webinar 1. We want to have this guaranteed traffic that we can start working with for our lead generation. And then I'm going to talk about spiky content and how to create spiky content. And spiky content is basically content that flushes in a lot of traffic in a short amount of time. It's not, search engine optimized. It's just really like your small bets on hitting a real home run, then driving traffic, a lot of traffic in a short amount of time. And I'm going to talk about all these things in this session in a way where we're not looking at, inspiration strikes. This is all like keeping strategy in mind, being able to act and not react, being able to predict things, and being very systematic about things. Before we dive in, have a look at the chat. Robin is in there from the team, and he's sharing helpful links throughout the session. He's going to share, when I talk about a few things, like for example, I'm pretty sure he already shared the link to the webinar 1 that's on YouTube. Don't feel stressed out about having to click and consume all of this during my presentation. Feel free to open it in your browser. But also, Robin is going to share a recording of this session and all of the material he links in the chat in this session in an email tomorrow. So in about 24 hours, you will get an email from him with the link to this recording and all of the relevant material that he shared in the chat during my presentation here. Also, there's going to be a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the presentation, so feel free to use the Q&A panel at any time during the presentation, but don't be weirded out if I don't respond to it, because I want to take the time at the end to go through everybody's questions and then respond to them, with enough time and meaningfully then, and not, sidetrack the presentation. And lastly, whenever I talk about content in this session, I mean text-based content that we publish on the blog. So when I say, let's have a look at the content calendar, or let's look at which content we published in which funnel stage, I mean blog posts. Yes, there are other content assets, obviously, right? There's podcasts and videos that you can publish on YouTube. Those are all great as well. But just for the purposes of this presentation, when I talk about content, I mean blog posts that we publish on our blog. Cool. So let's dive in. First of all, understanding the content funnel. Content funnel is a concept that can be used to understand the readiness and especially the intent of a reader. And that's super important because if we keep a high-level bird's eye view of the type of content we have published, it really helps us better understand where we have some gaps in our funnel. And the goal of the content funnel is basically to help us very clearly see where we have these gaps that make it hard and introduce friction for a reader to flow from just the awareness stage down to our product or to a sales conversation, right? Because again, the goal of content marketing is to reel people in and over time push them downwards the funnel closer to our product or to a sales conversation or a free trial, basically the product funnel or the sales funnel usually. And depending on the business goals, we might opt to publish different types of content. So more on that in a second. But let's have a look at the content funnel stages. So obviously there's the top of the funnel. That's the awareness stage. So previously, before the age of AI, this was quite simple if you went about it in a very, thoughtful and strategic way. Because simple things like, what is XYZ? If you did it well, you could rank for this. But now in the age of AI, with AI overviews and single-click content, it's not that easy anymore. So the latest numbers I heard was that about 75% of extremely generic top funnel content is answered in such a satisfying way and in such a good enough way by the AI overviews, either on Google or in your ChatGPT or Claude output, that people don't even click through to the website where that original information got from. And that is something we need to adapt to, right? I mean, it's kind of sad for us, right? Because the tried and trusted thing with, let's just create tons of what is super generic type of content, that doesn't work that well anymore. And I think we need to look that reality into the eyes. Hope is not a good foundation to build your strategy and your business on. So let's look at what is happening here and let's adapt to it. And the most realistic thing we can do here is probably the top of the funnel now needs to start a little deeper, and we need to be a little bit more long tail in the keywords that we're trying to reach to make people, aware of us and drop into our world. And I'll talk more about this later in the session. There are ways we can very strategically do that. The important thing here is in the top of the funnel, readers are still very far away from your product in terms of intent, right? So they're just trying to get a feel for the space or the industry. So obviously, if somebody is asking, I don't know, like my previous company that I sold was continuous integration and delivery in the cloud, right? So if somebody is asking, what is continuous integration? They're quite far removed from signing up for my product and swiping the credit card and paying money for it, because they're just trying to figure out what this thing actually is, right? So they don't know who we are. They don't know what we offer. They don't even know they're facing a problem that they're trying to solve. They're just trying to understand what's going on here, basically, right? And after the top funnel of the funnel, a logical next step is the middle of the funnel. So that's the consideration phase. And here, your readers kind of understand the fundamental around like your space and the world that you're in, right? And they might realize that they probably have a challenge that they want to have resolved. And there are solutions for that. But those solutions doesn't necessarily have to mean that's your product, right? They might look into, hey, am I building internal tooling for this? Or should I, have a third-party product, do that work for me? And it's really about people know enough about the space that they realize they could improve something about their setup, but they are not yet convinced that your product or your services are the way to go here, right? And this is a tricky stage in the funnel. I'm going to talk about this in a second, but it's a very, very important one to cover in your content output. And after the middle of the funnel, the bottom of the funnel is the next logical step, and that's the decision phase. So here, the readers realize that your product or your service is probably a good solution for the challenge, and they want to learn and understand, like if they're a practitioner, how to use it, right? So for a practitioner, the content could be your documentation articles or technical product tutorials or just content that shows high expertise in the field. But for decision makers, it could be comparison pages, case studies, stuff like that. And really here, the reader is just trying to gather data to convince themselves or the people that they report to that your solution is the best. And then the stage after the bottom of the funnel is basically either the beginning of the sales funnel or the beginning of the product funnel. So, right, the call to action can be sign up for a free trial, or it can be, book a discovery call with us. And here's how you can just, classic graphic of a funnel, how people basically flow through. And yes, this still works in the age of AI overviews and zero-click content. Again, certainly the AI overviews are biting into the potential traffic we can get from top of the funnel. But also, if we're smart about how we create and publish our content, we can steer people into specific stages from organic search, from ChatGPT output, from Claude output, from Perplexity, and all of these chatbots and AI platforms into our funnel. And it's just about being very, strategic about it and adhering to the best practices. I talked about the best practices in webinar number 1. We need to conduct keyword research, a bit more on this later in this presentation, but it's certainly still possible. It's, different now than it was just half a year ago, I would say, but it's still doable. I mean, we have the evidence, like our clients are successful with the strategies we implement for them, and we've seen it working. We're dog feeding our own frameworks for our content marketing. It is working. So basically, the main takeaway here about the content funnel is the thing that I want you to keep in mind is we can use it to strategically nudge our readers down the funnel. And so when I talk about the different funnel stages and the intent gaps, here's something we see happening quite a bit. So for example, right, I talked about depending on the business's goals, you might opt to create different content for different funnel stages. Give you a classic example. We sometimes have clients at Draft.dev, which is just like a small founding team, 2 technical founders. They're working on their product, and they come to us because they know content marketing is a good way to reach engineers, right, and get respect from engineering organizations, basically. And so because these are technical founders, they're building a product at the same time they're writing documentation around the product. And then it's very easy to also create some product tutorials, which is your bottom of the funnel content. And then they realize, okay, now we have some content live that explains how people can actually use our product. Problem is nobody yet knows our product. So we need to get more awareness, right? So then they want to start writing top funnel content. And that's quite natural. Like they might not think in terms of, oh, I need to create awareness content or top funnel content, but that's a natural thing that they try to do next, right? And so they write a little bit about it, and then it doesn't really work because there's no strategy around it, and then they give up. this is not good, right? This is where we come in, right? We can help create top funnel content, and we are very strategic about it, right? And it's based on keyword research and on a lot of other things that help us rank well to get traffic to content that fits well with your target audience and is strategically based in the content funnel, right? And so over time, we basically start just fleshing out the content funnel. Imagine this, right? Imagine you have a spreadsheet and you have in one column per row, you have the headline of your article, and then you have a column next to it that's just a funnel stage. So you right, top funnel, middle funnel, bottom funnel, top funnel, top funnel, top funnel, middle funnel, right? And then you just create a pie chart for that column with the funnel stage. And it gives you a really good overview. If you look at this pie chart, okay, where do we have the most content in which stage? And if you're very, early in your business, it's totally fine if most of the content is in the top funnel stage, right? Totally fine, because you want to attract people, you want to have awareness. But then the business soon might shift to different goals, and then it's really important that you switch your content output towards a different funnel stage. And that often, for example, is the middle of the funnel stage. And that's where most clients that we see are really having trouble with. I mean, right, we have also product people. Sometimes the product person is our main touch point in an organization, and they mainly want like tutorials, right? They want our subject matter experts to sign up for the product, read through the documentation, and then create different tutorials for different tech stacks. I don't know, like how to use our product with Ruby, how to use our product with Python, how to use our product with Node.js. We can do that, right? But really what most of our clients have trouble with is how to bridge that gap between the top of the funnel and the bottom of the funnel and that middle of the funnel content, right? How you can strategically create content that is not just super high level awareness, but that makes somebody understand that, hey, there's a solution and your product might be the solution for that, right? And so, yeah, the goal is that everybody is either coming into a blog post in a specific funnel stage, and we have links in there that link laterally into the same funnel stage, or that link one funnel stage downwards. And that's how we nudge people down, right? As you might say, like, okay, how can we do this? Well, there's a strategic way on how we think about topic discovery and planning the content that we publish, where we have this backlinking opportunity baked in. I'm going to talk about that in a second. But basically, as you can see, if somebody comes into top funnel content, link laterally to another top funnel content, or link down to middle of the funnel content. Don't really want to link to bottom of the funnel content because, again, the gap is so high, right? What is continuous integration? And then it's like, how to use CodeShip to set up continuous integrations within the cloud with a very specific tutorial. There's probably that gap is too big for somebody to immediately go down there and really want to check out the product because they don't even understand yet what continuous integration is, right? As mentioned. And so also don't forget, for all of these blog posts, if you watched webinar number 1, it's really good to also have a call to action that links to like a gated asset, a PDF, or like a sandbox that's behind a form or something like that, just as a shortcut conversation to understand, people can self-select into it basically to understand, is this like probably a lead for sales, right? So, because again, right, if somebody is coming in and we have a gated form and we ask them about, one of the sales qualifying criteria questions might be, what's your budget? And they say, I don't have a budget. Well, no SDR, like sales development rep, should really reach out to that person, because ideally, right, the deals that we close need to pay for the SDRs. And if somebody very proactively says, well, I don't have a budget, it's better not to hand them over to the sales funnel. It's better to, nurture them with our newsletter, and over time they might be big enough, and then, then we can start a conversation with them. But yeah, basically, if you're looking into a good content mix, usually what we see is the middle of the funnel is the hardest stage. But the good thing is we have a lot of subject matter experts. All of our writers are practicing professionals, software engineers with at least 10 years average experience. We can help you with that if you want. Let's jump into evergreen content. So evergreen content is basically the heartbeat of our content marketing and how it can bring revenue and success to our business. And it's optimized to drive consistent traffic, and it's our safety net of guaranteed traffic. And we use that guaranteed traffic to generate leads. And the nice thing is, this type of content really helps us orchestrate our reader's journey through the content funnel. So, as mentioned, it's designed to rank highly on search engine and being mentioned in AI overviews and AI chatbots, these citations, right? And it's often timeless and very useful content that's optimized for search. Don't misunderstand timeless, though. You have to think about content refreshes. They are very important, especially with the AI platforms, right? The crawlers, they always need to have the most up-to-date version. And so it's really important to keep content refreshes in mind. One really important thing here to understand, and this is where sometimes clients face a little bit of a, I wouldn't say dilemma, but patience is not patience is hard. But if you understand the strategy and know what it will do for you in the long run, it's a total no-brainer to implement this, right? Because why is patience hard? Well, evergreen content usually doesn't come out of the gate with a big bang. It starts building up slowly over time, and then you have your base layer of consistent traffic that you can just rely on with a content refresh every now and then, right? And again, consistency is key here. Knowing that in 2 months you will publish this type of evergreen content and it all fits together in a nice package. I'm going to talk about these packages in a second. That's really important. We want to be able to act and not react. We want to strategically plan what type of content we can put out there, right? This type of content is based on keyword research, the competitive landscape, your own capacity to produce content. And it's really important that most of the content, especially in the first few years of your content strategy, is aiming to be evergreen content. And not every article will work, right? We do our bets and not everything will work, but most of the time, if we're really strategic about it, it will work well. So here's an example of how could this look like. This is, again, we're dog feeding our own strategy here. This is an example from one of our blog posts on a Draft.dev blog, right? So you can see we published something around May, June. Then it took about 2 months to get to a stage that is now basically our base level of guaranteed traffic. Here I'm using as a metric page views, but you can see we basically have a guaranteed 1,000 page views per month on this article. And then we, serendipitously, we had one spike that wasn't even orchestrated by us. It just got picked up somewhere, which nice surprise for us, right? But that was not the main intention of this article. The main intention of this article was to be evergreen content that gives us this base layer of traffic. And now if you think about this, right? This is one article on our blog, 1,000 page views. Let's say these are 800 unique people that are coming every month to this blog post. And now imagine you have 20 of these blog posts. That's a guaranteed 16,000 unique people every month coming to your website. And that's this guaranteed traffic, this base level of traffic that we can then work with. And how we work with it, I talked a bunch about it in webinar 1, how to convert traffic into leads, basically. That is the exciting thing here. That's our heartbeat in the content marketing, right? This is how we grow slowly and steadily over time and make sure we always have eyes on our website. And then this traffic we are utilizing in smart ways to convert them either into deeper stages of the funnel or directly into the product sign up or a sales conversation. And so how do you actually plan this? And then how do you publish this, right? And so, as mentioned, this compounds over time. And the really important thing here is we are very strategic about how we think about which topics to utilize that we can use for evergreen content, right? So again, content discovery here is a science, not an art. I talked about this in webinar number 1. Most of this, it's great if you're creative, and it's great if you are inspired and have really good ideas. But really, a lot of this is discipline, consistency, and a very strategic approach, right? So yes, you can totally do internal interviews for topic discovery and community research. Look on Reddit what people are talking about in this space, stuff like that, right? But then it's all about, okay, let's do some real keyword research. Let's figure out keyword volume, keyword difficulty, like based on, our competitors might also want to rank for this. Look at what competitors are publishing. Where do they have gaps in their content where we can, jump in? Like, it's really about where is the battlefield where we can win easiest with content that's, yes, easy to win, and so rank well for, but also that fits into our world and is interesting to our target audience, right? And there's tools that help you with that. Of course, right? You have your base list from just your own brain and from your internal interviews and from the community research, but then we're using a bunch of tools to append these ideas, similar keywords, looking at the geographies, where is hard to win this, where is it hard to win this keyword, where is it easy, what are the competitors doing, right? And the important thing here is, once we have that, we want to have a consistent pulse of publishing this type of content. So again, this is what I talked about in webinar 1. We want to have a content buffer. We don't want to gung-ho, inspiration strikes, now I publish. We want to know, next Tuesday, I'm publishing this, and the Tuesday afterwards, I'm publishing this, and the Tuesday afterwards, I'm publishing this. And it's all based on research, and these articles fit nicely together, right? And so if you have internal team members or subject matter experts that are willing to write for this, great. But if you really want to up the output, which, my own company, we published 4 articles per week in the end, right? Don't have to get there. I think it's a good goal to, ideally you publish 1 article every week, but if you start with 1 article every other week, that's totally fine. But yeah, if you're looking to up your output, again, there are specialized agencies like Draft.dev that can help with it, right? Again, we are like specialized, we exclusively write tech content. We're not a general content agency. All of our writers are software engineers. All of our reviewers are software engineers. So we specialize in this, so we can help you with that kind of stuff. And so now, when I talked a bunch about this, like our content articles are nicely packaged. This is what I talked about. So we can create content clusters based on keyword research. What does this look like? So you have like an pillar article. I also sometimes call them umbrella article. And then you have sub-articles. How do you get to these? So let's say you did your keyword research and you have a bunch of keywords that, have nice high volume, low competition score, fit nicely into your world. You're quite sure your target audience is interested in this kind of stuff, right? Probably the keyword that has the highest volume will also be the hardest one in terms of difficulty. That should be your umbrella article, because that one is hard to win. And then you have a bunch of other keywords that are, all of the keywords here are somewhat related. They're around the same topic. So let's take an example. One of our most recent clients, which just signed a contract, they are in the MCP server space, right? So really big right now, AI, MCP servers, and there's a bunch of different topics. So you can run some keyword research on this, and then define topics that fit nicely together, and that's your content cluster. And then the hardest keyword should be your umbrella article, and then you have this other keywords that are from the related topic, and those are your sub-articles. And if you plan your content production like that, it automatically means that you have interlinking opportunities everywhere, right? Because they are around the same topic. So laterally linking among each other is a no-brainer, right? But also, the nice thing is each article can link up to the umbrella article, and the umbrella article can link down to each sub-article. And this is very powerful. So if you imagine, like, I don't know, you have this these sub-articles, and oftentimes what happens is that the umbrella article is kind of like a big overview that talks on a higher level about all of the main topics from the sub-articles. So then it's very natural that in that umbrella article, you write, 3-4 paragraphs about a specific topic, and then it's like, if you want to learn more about XYZ, and then you link down to the sub-article about XYZ, right? And what's also really, really nice here is that you can use this setup that I just mentioned, right? The umbrella article being like somewhat of an overview of the topics in the sub-articles. You can, out of the umbrella article, create a PDF or some other like lead magnet, right? And the nice thing here is, because it is a summary of the umbrella article, you can have this PDF that's, on a landing page behind a form. That's your lead generation device, right? You can place this call to action on the umbrella article and on every sub-article. So basically, if you approach these content clusters in a strategic way, you have internal links among each article, upwards and downwards, and baked into the whole framework, you have your gated asset that you can promote on these articles. And then you can also basically, among the sub-articles, have different funnel stages where we then link laterally or downwards to the funnel. And we always have the option of the call to action to gated asset, which is the shortcut right into our, sales qualifying, basically. Is this an SQL or is it an MQL that we want to nurture over time, right? And this whole approach is very effective, because if you have the topics that belong together and then you start interlinking them, this makes search engines, but also AI platforms understand what topics on your domain are about. So it gives you topical authority. So whenever you then publish another article that's around the same topic, we already have a big head start, because the crawlers already understand, oh, this domain is about, and it's like, these seem to be talking about MCP servers a lot. So that's where their topical authority is, right? This is very, very powerful. And now let's have a look of how this could actually look like, right? Because I talked earlier about some examples with, don't be too generic. So probably nowadays you cannot, this is like from a previous client of ours that are in the data integration space. And so previously you probably could have gotten away with like, what are system integrations, right? This probably now will be not doable because the AI views are good enough to cover that, right? But you might be a little bit more long tail and just say, what are different types and benefits of data integrations, right? And then you can talk about ETL, reverse ETL, and stuff like that. Link down to specific articles that talk specifically about this, right? And then the middle of the funnel could then be, okay, how do data warehouses help you run your business more efficiently? And then you understand, oh, actually, I think it would make sense in our business to also, have a data warehouse. And then the bottom of the funnel content is obviously, okay, how to integrate Salesforce with your product, for example. And really the main takeaway here is you really have the power to orchestrate your reader's journey through the funnel, where they drop in, like they self-select into a specific stage. So for example, they search for something and it's a middle of the funnel piece. Okay, via the framework that we have implemented, we then immediately either link to another middle of the funnel piece or bottom of the funnel piece. We don't link upwards because the intent gap is not there. We want them to be downwards, right? And so that's why it's really important to keep in mind how your content mix is, that this like pie chart that I talked about, right? And then we can strategically plan ahead. We look at, okay, the business now wants us to drive more awareness. Okay, probably should have more top of the funnel content. Okay, let's start creating that. Let's build our content clusters. Let's do our keyword research, our topic research. Then let's build our content clusters and get this into production. And then we have our content buffer. We know what's happening. We know what we're publishing in 2 months, basically. So yeah, we want to be really intentional with how we do topic discovery and how we work on the production of it, and then how we publish the stuff and all of the linking opportunities in it. And all of it together plays very well and helps with, being mentioned in AI citations and, ranking well on Google. It's baked into the framework. And we've seen it time and time again, working for very large companies with over 100 million in ARR and working for small companies where just the founding team is approaching us, basically. Okay, now let's look at creating spiky content. This is pretty much an amazing way to get brand awareness and to generate leads. But it's not what you think. It's not the actual traffic that comes in on that one day. It's what we then do with the traffic afterwards. So we can use it for brand awareness and for mainly refilling and filling up our retargeting audience. So I talked about retargeting in webinar 1 much more in detail. It's very powerful. So again, Robin can link you to the specific section in the webinar video about retargeting. Give it watch it after the session if you want. But basically, right, when I said Evergreen content usually doesn't come out with a bang, Spiky content does. And it's designed to be widely shared or to go, if you want, viral, right? And so I often talk about this, like, you want to get picked up in what I call multiplicators. And multiplicators are basically platforms that work hard on getting more eyes onto their platform. So, you might know Hacker News, you might know Lobsters, or some tech newsletters. Let's take the tech newsletters for an example, right? So I know Ruby Weekly by Cooper Press, Peter Cooper, he's absolutely awesome. His newsletters that they publish are of the highest quality, really, really good. I highly recommend. So you want to basically, or let's talk about this, right? These tech newsletters, their business model is basically to grow their subscriber base, because if they get more subscribers, they get more people opening their emails, which means more eyes on sponsored placements that businesses pay for to get a sponsored slot in those tech newsletters, right? And so if they get more subscribers, that means they can ask for more money for the sponsorship slots. And so while we are building our product, right, we're building our solution for MCP, the tech newsletters are working on increasing their audience. And so the main thing here now is we want to be featured organically in these tech newsletters, right? We don't want to pay for the sponsored placement. We just want to show up in there because we have genuinely really good content that gets featured in there. And then what type of content is this? So oftentimes it's like, very timely content. I don't know, like Postgres 18 is coming out soon, I think. So such as like, I tried the Postgres 18 beta, and these are my main takeaways. This could be an attempt for a spiky traffic, right? You submit this to Hacker News, and people might be really interested. Suddenly you have 20,000 people on your page, right? It can also be, though, very opinionated and controversial content, right? Having a really contrarian stance. One thing I want you to think about is like, keep your values in mind. So, for example, do you want to jump on the opportunity when one of your competitors had an outage? There are businesses that might opt to do that, and others say, no, that's not what we are. So you just have to decide how you want to handle this. But yeah, timely stuff usually works quite well, or having a very strong stance. And so here's what this could look like, right? So here you can see we had a bunch of attempts for spikes. You see some smaller ones worked out okay, and then mid-August we hit a really nice one. So on one day we got over 15,000 page views. So what are we doing with those, though, right? So how do we make that happen, right? I said we had a bunch of attempts for spiky traffic. Well, how? What are we doing, right? So first of all, you want to be really strategic about like publishing your spiky attempts. So yes, they can be timely, but again, they can be contrarian or have a really strong opinion. So I think you should really sketch them in your content calendar. And so that means you commit to trying at least, I would say, once a month, having like an attempt at a spiky article, right? And so it's really important that you understand your target market. So probably your internal team, or in some cases, again, agencies like Draft.dev that only focus on the tech industry are a good bet. But really, honestly, probably your like founders or somebody on the exec team that has the authority, like understands the space really well, are the best people to publish this, right? Because again, if you're building a product for MCP servers and you're writing about, security with MCP, that's much, much more believable and meaningful than, a content agency writing about this, because you live and breathe, or your company lives and breathes this topic every day. And you want to write for humans here, right? So where Evergreen content is like super scientific, we do the research, we are very strategic about it. This, no need to optimize for keywords, nothing. This is all about shareability and distribution, right? How do we write about something that touches a nerve, basically? And really make room for those spike attempts, because if you don't have that kind of sketched in, it's always like, oh, I'll write this when inspiration strikes. But again, that's not what we are about, right? We want to be strategic. We want to act and not react. And why are these traffic spikes so powerful? So I talked about retargeting, right? And so basically, let's say, right, somebody submits an article on Hacker News, and suddenly we're on the front page of Hacker News. And in one day, we're getting 20,000 unique people to our blog. Well, okay, these people come to our blog, they read the article, they get value out of it, and then they X out. I was like, well, that's a little sad. They might not even have seen our logo. They have no idea what we're doing. They get all of this value, and we get, okay, our analytics dashboard says 20,000 people were here for 7 minutes, and then they're gone, right? But if we capture this traffic in retargeting, in our retargeting audience, we can be very smart about what we're doing with this traffic, right? Because let's say these people came to your website and then they X out. They didn't even look at your logo. They have no idea what your business is about. Well, if you just create a simple graphic as a banner that has your logo and your tagline in there. So for example, let's say, again, CodeShip was my company, CodeShip, continuous integration and delivery in the cloud. These people can now see this banner for a specific amount of time. So I'm writing here on the slide, as you can see. At the beginning, I would suggest like a 90-day window. Yes, that sounds a little aggressive, but really, if at the beginning nobody knows you, you want to create that awareness, right? By all means, if you're already more established, dial it down, shorten that time window. You can also, even when you do 90-day time window, you can say how many times per day should your banner be shown and limit it by that, and don't spam people and be respectful. But really, at the beginning, I think it's fine if you have this 90-day time window. And so, again, these people were on your page, but then they left. But now, for 90 days, they basically see your logo and your tagline. And so somebody was on the CodeShip blog, doesn't know what we're doing, but for the next 90 days, they'll see CodeShip, continuous integration and delivery in the cloud. Great. Next time they're thinking about, software testing, they will have that in their head. Hey, CodeShip does continuous integration and delivery in the cloud. And that is really, really powerful. And another thing you can do is have one of your gated assets. So let's take an example with the MCP server again, right? Let's say this client publishes an article that gets picked up on Hacker News. Ideally, you have a downloadable asset that you can use as a call to action in this article. Great, right? That's something I talked about in webinar number 1. You want to have a fitting asset that's a good natural link out to learn more about the topic you talked about in this blog post. But also, you should have a retargeting ad that links to the landing page of that asset. So let's say we have this MCP server article, and security and safety with MCP servers, really, strong stance, really good article, gets picked up on Hacker News, 20,000 people come, then they leave. Well, if we, for example, have a landing page that promotes an asset behind a form that's something like, your security checklist for MCP servers, right? Something that fits very well with what this article is about. We now can show this banner to those 20,000 people, and they see that banner. And again, like mentioned in the first webinar, you might say, well, these are software developers. They have ad blockers, and they're not clicking through ads. As mentioned back then, the world is a big place. There are software developers that click on this stuff. We see it every week, every month. We see it in our client success. We've seen it for many, many years before. Yes, my personal thought would also be, they're not clicking on this, but we see it in the data. They do. And the nice thing also is, right, if they don't, that's fine. Retargeting audiences, sending impressions on retargeting ads is free. Only the clicks cost you money. So isn't that amazing? You've got 20,000 people coming in from your Spiky content. And then for 90 days, these people see your logo and your tagline, and it's free. Unless they click on it. But that's also good because then the intent to try the product is already much bigger, right? So it's a win-win. So definitely have your retargeting audiences set up and have at least the logo with the tagline there and try to get your spikes in. And so again, as mentioned, I would be really strategic about trying to publish spiky content. So again, let's take this 90-day time window. So that's 3 months, 1 quarter, right? Let's say you publish 1 article per week, then per month, you want to have at least 1 attempt at a spiky content, right? So that gives you 3 chances per month. If 1 in 3 actually gets picked up by a newsletter or gets onto Hacker News or gets onto Lobsters, right? You create that spike that fills up your retargeting for 90 days. And that buys us the time to work on the next attempts, right? And you might not hit 1 in 3, but maybe you hit 1 in 6, and that's also good, right? So those are your, put that in your content calendar, these bets on trying to create spiky content, because as mentioned, it's so powerful. You might have this one article that within 1 day brings in as many readers as you usually get in a whole month. And that is very powerful. But also, as mentioned, the weighting of this thing is, right, you have per month 1 attempt at a spike and 3 that just grow your baseline of guaranteed traffic, where you compounds over time, more and more, you have a higher and higher base level. As mentioned, in my own company at CoachUp, our base level at the end was 85,000 unique readers per month were just coming to our blog posts. And I didn't have to actively manage it, right? Yeah, content refreshes every now and then, but it just worked in the background. All the backlinking was in the content cluster set up that we nudge people down the funnel or that they download one of our assets. We had over 30 different assets that fit well with the different content clusters. Then that strategy generated 1,500 marketing qualified leads per month. And it was running in the background. And all we had to do, the team was 3 people, by the way, right? So you can achieve this with a very small team if you really are disciplined and commit to it. But all we had to do is think strategically ahead. What does the business need? Okay, which funnel stage do we need to cover? Let's do some topic discovery. Let's figure out which content clusters to create. And then let's start writing it. And writing, really, that's oftentimes a challenge, but that's where the bottleneck is. And that's why agencies like Draft.dev exist, right? If you are a client that wants to implement this, you might have, willing, if you do have willing internal team members, that's great. A lot of times it doesn't even happen, or leadership in the exec team doesn't allow for a software engineer to write stuff for your marketing team because these engineers need to build product, especially in the early stages, right? So, yeah, I think I'll keep it at that. This is pretty much the main takeaway is, try to be strategic about creating spiky traffic, but also have the prerequisites set up for expansion, especially your retargeting audience and the banners for it. And again, I talk more about this in webinar number 1. So for now, let's go into the Q&A. Before I do that, though, just want to mention again, this was part 2 of a multi-part series. So there's going to be another webinar. The next one is on August 6th, and I talk more about strategic ways for content promotion and distribution, because rule number 1 in content is just because it's published doesn't mean the job is done. The job is only done when you've also promoted it and distributed it, right? And so, as mentioned, I hope you have internal subject matter experts that can help you with this. If you do, I'm very happy for you, because it's not a given and it doesn't happen a lot. But if you're convinced, or you think you want to give this a try, this whole strategic approach to publishing content, nudging people down the funnel, etc. We are there for you, right? We have hundreds of writers. All of our writers are practicing software engineers. All of our reviewers are practicing software engineers, an average of at least 10 years experience in the industry. And we exclusively focus on creating technical content. We are not a general content agency. All of our writers, all of our brains are geared towards tech, serving companies that produce software. So let's jump into the Q&A now, and let's see what we have here. All right. So Harry is asking if I can walk through again what a good mix of evergreen content and spiky contents would be ideally. Like what is the minimal setup? Yeah, so again, like this is much easier if you have a content calendar and you have your placeholders in there and you commit to actually producing that kind of stuff. I talked about this in webinar number 1. I think it's really important to publish at least twice per month. You want to establish a pulse and an internal accountability to, really commit to building a content marketing engine. If you say, once a month, maybe that's it's very it's not really committing to it, right? So you want to publish at least twice a month, and that's also a good pulse and signal for search engines that the crawlers see, oh, there's consistently new stuff happening and on this domain all about the same topics. And so if you think about it that way, again, you don't have to publish 4 articles per week, but let's say you want to publish twice per month, then I think once a quarter you want to try this spiky attempt. And so with that in mind, not every spiky attempt will be picked up by a multiplicator, but I think at least once or twice a year, you want to have achieved that you got spiky traffic in there. And again, then you might even opt for increasing that retargeting time window. But again, be very, very careful there. We don't want to spam people. We don't want to annoy them. And 90 days already is quite long. So, I think the maximum you can do there is 1.5 years. But that's just, frankly, in my opinion, ridiculous, right? Who wants to see that? That's more annoying. It's detrimental to the brand instead of positive, right? Okay, another question here. Steven is asking, what if I'm just on a very small team? What content output should I focus most on? So yeah, again, this is highly dependent on like the business's goals. So for example, if you are one of the technical co-founders, I think it's totally okay if you at the beginning focus on bottom of the funnel content, right? You're building your product, you're writing the code, you're writing documentation. So by all means, create tutorials for it, right? Because that's kind of a very natural, easy thing to do. If you're already writing documentation anyway, write some tutorials for it, right? But then, in my opinion, if you're a very small team and you're starting out, it's really important to think about the top of the funnel, the awareness generation. How do you reel people into your world? And again, I know this sounds hard because, of course, ideally, you want to have content people come to and then they immediately sign up for your product. But content marketing is a long game, and it's a game like the numbers count, right? You want to cast a wide net, and then you convert that lower and lower right in the funnel, and then a small subset actually converts to revenue for the business. And so if you have the cash in the bank, go for awareness generation, but keep in mind, yes, the intent gap to the actual conversion to product signups or a sales conversation is big, because you're really starting to teach these readers just a rough, blurry outline of your space. And then you just over time strategically nudge them down towards your product, right? But yeah, I would say go with, if you're small, definitely have at least 1 or 2 bottom of the funnel assets, and then focus on the top of the funnel of the funnel to create more awareness. Okay, then I see one last question here by Michelle. Can you talk a little bit more about retargeting and what are some other good ways? So yeah, I talked in webinar 1 about this quite a bit. I think the important thing a super quick TLDR here. The important thing to understand about retargeting audiences is there's a very powerful thing, which are exclude audiences. And with retargeting, just like with everything that we do, right? With our newsletter or the type of content we publish, we want to be respectful and earn trust and respect from our audience and really build a meaningful relationship to have real sincere engagement, right? We don't want to have, 10,000 people in our newsletter, but only 3% open it. That doesn't drive business, right? That's not helpful. We really want to have an engaged audience. And so, for example, with retargeting, what you can do is you can create exclude audiences. So, for example, you can have things like, like let's talk about the MCP server again and the checklist, right? So that's a gated asset that's on a landing page behind the form. That form has sales qualification questions. So for example, what's your budget, right? And so if we already know that information, we know what kind of lead we have. Is it a sales lead that a human rep should reach out to because they have high budget? No, it's not a sales lead. What we can do is, after the submission of this form, we can send people to a thank you page. And that thank you page is a conversion event. And that thank you page can be used. Literally, you can just create an exclude audience that has a URL of the thank you page. And anybody who has visited this page, we now know they've answered our sales qualifying question. And so we got out of them what we wanted to know from them. So why should they now still see our ads, right? We know from them what we needed to know in order to provide meaningful, valuable outreach, right? Should a salesperson reach out or not, right? And so because we know that, we now should not send them ads anymore, for example, right? And so what you can do is you can have people came from Hacker News, 20,000 people came, they see your retargeting ad about the checklist for MCP servers. They download this stuff, they come to the thank you page, and now the people don't see this ad anymore because the people that we're sending, the traffic that we're sending the ad impressions to are an include audience of this blog post with an exclude audience of the thank you page. And that ensures that we don't spam these people, right? And then again, watch webinar number 1, but I also talked about in your URLs having, for example, the word Python or the word Ruby in there, and then having ads set up specifically that talk about Python and promote an asset that's in the Python space or in the Ruby ad, because why would anybody that's interested in Ruby want to download a Python ebook or guide, for example? So of course they should see the Ruby guides. Yeah, I see no other questions at the moment, so I'm gonna stop it here. As mentioned, Robin will share like tomorrow at some point during the day. We'll send an email to you that has the link to the recording of this whole webinar and everything else that I talked about, like and all the material he basically shared in the chat. And yeah, you can check out Draft.dev/webinars to see our upcoming webinars. We have a fireside chat coming up soon. That's our other type of webinar where we talk with, industry leaders in the tech space and just have kind of more casual chats about specific topics with them. I'm doing my next webinar in August, and it's all about content promotion and distribution. And I'm already excited for it. This whole thing is a lot of fun. Implementing a good content strategy and seeing the evidence and the data that it works and drives revenue for the business is very fulfilling, in my opinion. And that's why we built Draft.dev, and that's why we're happy to serve you. But for now, see you soon, and thanks for trying today.